There it is. Okay, so starting from the beginning, the website to get onto MITS is, if you look at the top left-hand corner of the screen, it's mits.lrdis.com. You click on it and it'll bring you right to this sheet, to this page where it's asking you for a user ID and a password. If everyone hasn't done this yet, and anyone have trouble logging in, please get with IT help and make sure you have a username and password and are able to get into MITS. You will need to be able to get into MITS in order for the test. So you'll have a username and password. Once you do it once, it's going to fill in the blanks for you. So from here, I am going to go to the Eleanor University folder just so we can work on how to export a report once it's completed into Excel. And then after I do that, we'll end the class there as well. Okay, here's a report that we did a couple weeks ago, which was Weiss year-to-date sales by vendor. So it's only showing Weiss supermarkets year-to-date sales by vendor. So when you open up a MITS report, they're all going to look something similar to what's on my screen here. What you want to do in order to bring this into Excel is you want to click on the Excel export here. Then it'll say, when you click on export, it'll give you the options to export to Excel, export to PDF, or advanced. I usually, 99% of the times, I put things into Excel. Occasionally, if I know I'm sending something to someone that doesn't have Excel, I'll put it into a PDF. But for all intents and purposes, everyone on this call should have Excel, so you should be exporting to Excel. It'll take it a couple minutes to export out. Okay, when you hit export, you'll see at the bottom of your screen, it'll actually ask you if you want to open or save the file. If you just click on open, it'll open up Excel. You have to hit enable editing up at the top. So every single training class that I've had now, I've showed everybody how to clean up the report. And I'll show you guys again, because I believe it's just so important. If you're ever going to be working on anything advanced with this data, if you're going to try to do pivot tables from it, or you're going to try to do subtotals from the data, you really need to get rid of all of the subtotals and totals on the spreadsheet. This report is bringing us down from Weiss markets, then it's going to take us to vendor, then it's taking us to item. So it means anything that doesn't have a SKU or a product or UPC in here is nothing more than a subtotal. All these you want to get rid of. So the first thing I do every time I open up an Excel report is get rid of the top two rows, delete it, and then delete the first column on the left. Now what you need to do is get rid of all of the subtotals. The easiest way to do that is select all of the data on your screen. So you go all the way down, in this case, to 5,540 rows. Hit Data and Filter. Now that you have the filters on, you want to pick one of these columns and you want to filter out the blanks. That will get rid of all of your subtotals in the document. So I'm going to pick any one of these. I'm going to uncheck Select All. I'm going to go all the way down and select Blanks Only. And these are all of my subtotals. And I'm going to select them. And I'm going to delete them. Now you have a clean spreadsheet that you could use for pivot tables, subtotals. You know that this one item, year to date, did $5,700 of sales in Weiss markets. You don't have any subtotals. If you want a subtotal, you have to create it yourself within subtotals or pivot table. But by removing the subtotals that MITS threw on the report, it's not going to break your It's not going to give you incorrect data on your pivot tables or subtotals when you get that far. So again, that's when you export a report, delete the top two, and I'll back up one more time just so everyone sees it one more time. Select all the data on your sheet, put filters on, select blanks only, and delete. That's simple. Okay, so with that being said, I want to come in here and I want to create a report from scratch. This is very similar to something that I'm going to have you guys do as part of the test for MITS. So I'm going to go back to the beginning and I'm going to click New. I want a report and I want custom. I always use custom. I never use any of these other options down here. Please select a hypercube. For all intents and purposes, anyone in the sales department, everything you need is either going to be in the invoice cube, which would be sales invoice history, invoice, or for the purchasing department, most anything you need will be in the inventory cube or invoice cube. And then for the ops managers looking for call reports and stuff will be in the calls cube. But like I said, 90% of everything you're going to be looking for will be in the invoice cube, so I'll start there. Once you select which cube, it's going to bring down all of the columns that are available in that cube. Takes it a few minutes because it's populating all of the data. Which it seems to be running a little bit slower than normal today. Okay, so it finally came up. So when you first start out a report, you need to get down to the basic information that you want to display at first. You could always make changes to it, but the first thing that I want to look at here is I want to look at just sales. So if you scroll down to the S's, you'll have sales. I want to know sales by period. I want to go back 1 period, 2 periods, and these are out of order, so you have to kind of look for them. 3 periods, 4, 5, 6. So that's going to give me sales back 6 periods for whatever data I want to look at, but click OK. So what this is just showing you is the first thing that comes up is L&R as a whole. This is the entire company sales by month going back to November. So then what we want to do is we want to drill in depending on what information you're looking for. So if I click on invoice and it's highlighted blue, this time I want to go to vendor. The last sample report I did, I drilled into Weiss and I showed you which vendors were the biggest vendors by item for Weiss. This time I'm going to go into vendor first. Maybe this is a report that someone in purchasing would run. So I'm going to go into vendor and I'm going to click expand all rows. So what we're looking at here is a bunch of zeros and blanks. The easiest way to get rid of the zeros and blanks is to filter out the zeros. In order to do that in MITS, I need to come back in and I need to grab a year-to-date column. And I'll show you the reason why I'm doing this as soon as it comes up. Wow, I'm sorry, everyone. This is just terrible. This usually takes a little bit, but usually doesn't take this long. Okay, so what I need to do is, in order for me to get rid of those zeros, I'm going to bring in sales and I'm going to bring it in year. So I'm going to bring in two different columns and I'm going to show you a calculation at the same time here. So I'm going to bring in sales year to date and I'm going to bring in sales back 1 year. So this is going to give me the last 12 and 17 months worth of sales. Click OK. So now we have sales for the full year of 2015 and the sales for year-to-date 2016. So for me putting a filter on here, I want to eliminate anything that has a 0 in every month going across because it's just junk that is making the report useless. So by filtering that out, I'll be able to get rid of all of the zeros. But if I'm looking at a report for the last 6 months here, this goes back all the way to November, and I did this on purpose. This goes back to November of 2015, December 15, January, February, March, April 16. So if I filtered on any one of these columns by itself, I could be eliminating sales that happened. So what I want to do is I want to add together my entire year 2015 sales to my year-to-date 2016 sales. How I'm going to do that is I'm going to click here, and I'm going to insert column function. Anyone that's been on the other classes, this is something I've never showed you before. But insert column function. Now it wants to know what function you want. I simply want to do one column plus another. So now one column plus another, I want to know sales year to date. Click the arrow here. Sales back 1 year. Click the arrow there. And you could put it before the column you're working on or after the column you're working on. Click OK. So now you could see this is sales year 2016 through May 4th plus year 2015. So now if I put a filter on this column, column filters, now I can say sales 2016 plus 2015 is not equal to 0. So this will get rid of all of my zeros. Okay, so what this left me here is anything, it got rid of anything that had a 0 in every month or every year going across. So everything that's left is either a negative or a positive number. So now what I want to do is I want to sort these by descending by our #1 vendor year to date. So our #1 vendor year to date very clearly here is Maybelline. It's $3 million more than Revlon. But Maybelline's our #1 vendor, and here's all of our other vendors company-wide descending order. So now, if we wanted to drill into this a little bit more and see which Maybelline item is our #1 Maybelline item, we can click here, and we can come in and say we want to go down to, you know what, this is not giving me the information that I want, attacking it this way. The only options under this is I could tell you which our #1 customer for Maybelline is. I would have to go into this a different way to find our #1 Maybelline item. But for here, I can tell you who our #1 customer for Maybelline is. So if I just hit expand, so here we go. Now we know for Maybelline, our #1 customers, Wakefern, then Harris Teeter, then Wegmans. Now you can go down into major group and product. In this case, I want to know our #1 Maybelline item for Wakefern. So I would just come down here and hit expand. So now we know Wakefern's #1 item is Volume Express Mascara Very Black. So now, in order for this to be usable for anybody, there's good data here, depending on if someone's looking to have this information. But in order to do anything with this, we need to know a UPC number, a SKU number, an obsolete flag, anything else anybody can think of, a product line. You know, we could bring all of that information onto this report. So let's go ahead and do that. So let's say I'm going to go back here, and I know it's slow, but there's really no other way. So when this comes up, we're going to add UPC, SKU, obsolete flag, and maybe even major group. Okay, so now the place that you would find this information is most of the information you're looking for could be found either under non-metric columns or product-related columns. I know a bunch of it's under non-metric, so I'm going to go here first. And a lot of this is trial and error. So what you're going to look for here is I want SKU. So here's my SKU number, and these will probably all bring in the same thing. And by the way, you could rearrange these columns over in your, when you select columns, you can rearrange them to whatever order you want. It's easier to do here than on the front screen. Now I want to come into UPC, which it's all alphabetical. So I want my UPC code. I'm going to bring that up front. Vendor number if anyone needs it. What else? If you want to bring in the UPC check digit. You could bring in if there's a superseding product, if it's superseded, a substitute UPC, just to go through some of the other information on here. The SAJ MOQ, you could bring in the SAJ part number, the shelf pack. I actually want the obsolete. If you want to bring in replacement cost, you can bring that in. So like I said, a lot of this is going to be trial and error until you find exactly what you're looking for. If you want to bring in PV costs, something that you might be looking at, Steve, or someone from purchasing. Out of stock status, out of stock expiration date. Obsolete product, obsolete. So let's go with that for now. Wonderful, it's having trouble. One of these columns that I brought in is not good. Okay, it has nothing to do with what I did. There's actually a problem in MITS. Let's try this again. Like I said, don't be afraid of breaking anything. The error message that you just seen is something I haven't seen in a really long time. I think it's having trouble communicating with the server. Not sure what's going on, but it probably has something to do with why it's taking so long to bring up the columns. Okay, so let's try that again. I'll go quicker this time. I want the obsolete flag. I want the SKU, and I want the UPC. SKU, I'm just moving them up so they come on the beginning of the report. Hopefully it works this time with no error. There we go, that's the way it's supposed to work. Okay, so you can see I brought in the SKU. Now if you were gonna try to compare this to a Prelude report or to a customer's data or whatever you're trying to do, now you have the SKU number, the UPC, the check digit, the obsolete flag, and the sales going back to November. Now, you know, if you wanted to here, you could filter this. You could say column filters, and you could say the obsolete flag is equal to yes if you want to see which items are obsolete. So now it's just showing me the obsolete Maybelline items for Wakefern. So all of these items that they've sold are now discontinued. You can do just the opposite and show the active items by selecting flag being no. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this report and I'm going to save it under LNR University, which everyone on this call has access to that. In case anyone wants to refer back to what we reviewed, this is going to be Maybelline obsolete items for Wakefern. Click OK. Now I just saved that report. So what I'm going to do again, just so I can show everyone how to bring this into Excel, just to repeat myself again on this, make sure everyone gets it, export to Excel. Click open. Every single time you export a report out of MITS into Excel, it's going to be the same exact way. So you're going to delete the top two columns. I'm sorry, the top two rows. Delete the first column. Put filters on the report by selecting all of the data on the report. Data, filter, select blanks only. Get rid of all the data that comes up. Clear your filters, and now you have nice clean data on your report. You have everything you could possibly need here: SKU, UPC, check digit, whether or not it's obsolete. So let's see here. How do I want to look at this next? So let's do another test report. I'm going to cancel out of this. I'm going to do a new report, custom report. I am going to use the invoice cube again, which is right here, sales invoice history. And again, we'll wait for it to come up. Okay, so here now again, I normally start with bringing in some sales fields, but I could also bring in some units. So I could bring in units year to date, units back 1 year. Just to show you some of the power of MITS, I could bring in, let me grab sales first. So I want sales year to date, sales back 1 year, and then I'll just arrange these so we have sales year to date, and then I'm going to have units year to date, and I'm going to have sales back 1 year, and then units back 1 year. So let's say we want to know, we're going to look at a customer, we want to know what our profit looks like. So if we come into here, I want gross profit margin, dead net cost. Gross profit margin, dead net. Now, this is something you guys have to be careful with. If you're running a report and you want to know what our gross margin, profit margin, dead net is, as you could see, we have gross profit margin, dead net cost for distributions, for new stores, for promotions, and regular orders. If you use one of these fields, you're only going to get these order types. These are different order types: regular orders, promotions, new stores, and distribution. If I want everything, I have to use the one that doesn't specify the order type. So if I want to know our gross profit margin dead net, again, I'm going to go to year. I'm going to go to year to date, and I'm going to select back 1 year. So I'm going to bring this up. So now I have sales, gross profit in units, sales, gross profit in units. So that's the gross profit margin. So now I want to know our, what else do I want to know on here? How about profit dollars? So we'll bring in the two flags. So again, we have so let's see what that looks like on the report. So again, the very first time you click on that report, before you drill down to anything, it's giving you all of the company data. So that shows you, the gross profit margin, how much profit dollars, and how many units. And same detail versus last year. So now we want to look at, when we click on the first drill down, you have all of these options available to you. Customer, customer type, that would be chain no service, chain with service, alternative markets, LRLS, you name it. You can pick out, you could look at all of the detail or any one of those. You could do it by major group, product line, vendor. In this case, let's go back to customer. So I'm going to click expand all rows. Again, it's going to bring in whatever junk it happened to find in the system. So what I want to do here is I want to do the same thing I did before, is I want to create another row, and I want to add year-to-date sales to 2000 plus 2015 sales. So I want to go over to here, click on any one of these blue lines, and I want to insert a column function. I want to add one column plus another, and as you can see, there's a bunch of other options in here. You could do, difference, you can divide, you can multiply, you can do the margin in here, but in this case, it's going to be pretty simple. I just want to know one column plus another. I want to know sales 2016 plus sales 2015. Click OK. That added these two columns together. Now I want to put a filter on this column. Is greater than 0. Okay, so it put the filters on, so now I want to sort it. I'm going to sort it high to low. So again, we know year to date, Wakefern's our #1 customer. There's our gross profit. There's our gross profit last year. So it looks like our gross profit went up a little bit with Wakefern over the last, since last year. Harris Teeter looks like it went down a little bit. Just, very, very small amounts. But there you go. So now if you want to look at, so we have which customers on here. I'm trying to think how I want to look at this now. So what I notice is missing from this report, if you were going to try to do anything with the data, is you would need customer number on here. In order to get customer number on here, you have to go back to the grid. So we'll go back to modify, display tables. I hate clicking on this, but I do need to show this to you guys so you're able to run your own reports. Hopefully, once I'm done with this, I will get in touch with IT and see what the reason why it's being abnormally slow today. This does normally take a little while, but this seems like it's taken twice as long. Okay, so now we want customer number. So you would go down to the bottom where it says customer related columns. And it's the field called cust.num. It's this one right here, cust.num. Click OK. Okay, so now I have the customer number here. So now I have some other options in here. So if I want to go down and I want to say just for Wakefern, I want to know what ship to customers are under Wakefern. So if I click expand, so I'm going to come here, I'm going to go down to ship to customer. Now the options here are expand by specific values, expand all rows, or by all values. The first expand option means you're just going to look at Wakefern ship tos. Expand by specific values would be if you wanted to look at one specific store for Wakefern. All rows would expand every single customer that we do business with into all of their ship tos, which would be a huge report. And expand all by specific values wouldn't really apply here. If you had to store one for every one of these chains, then that's where you would find it. So for this case, I just want to expand Wakefern to the ship to level. So now we know out of Wakefern, ShopRite number 245 is their #1 store year to date. And it gives you obviously their gross profit this year versus last year. Now you're at the ship to level, you could actually go down and you could see which vendor or which product is that ship to's #1 product or which major group. So for this case, let's just expand major group real quick. So now you know that store did 65,600 in volume for Wakefern, but 55 of it was cosmetics, 7 was hair care, 3,000 was health and beauty, and do not include in net and web was $300. So now if you wanted to know, if you drilled into this again, it would actually get you to the product level. So again, if you wanted to know Wakefern store number 245, what's their #1 cosmetic item, this is how you would get it. So again, if you look at your drill downs here, you have invoice customers shipped to major group products. So you have Wakefern store 245, major group cosmetics. Now you're at the item level for cosmetics. And this iStudio is their #1 item. I'm not going to do it now because it's going to take too long, but if you brought in the column for SKU number and UPC, you could bring that in right here too. So now you would know this iStudio ink pen, you would know if it's obsolete or active. You could tell you what the UPC and SKU is, what the P line is. You can have all the information is in here about that item, about any item. So I'm going to go back now, and MITS does allow you to go back. So now I'm back to invoice customer. So this is, we already know Wakefern's our #1 customer. So now I'm going to come back to vendor. So now we know within Wakefern, Maybelline's our #1 vendor. So now this is where I showed you last week how to work with the MQLs. You would, in order, if you ran this report and you were doing it for Wakefern, now all of a sudden you wanted to do it for another customer, you could actually, instead of going in and going through all the drill downs again, you could simply come over here. Actually, let me get another customer number, and I'm not on Prelude right now, I don't think. Okay, so another customer number would be Harris Teeter, which is HA4785. So if I was in Wakefern and I wanted to know the vendor, so now we're back to the actual vendor. Before I do this, I'm going to show you again multiple layer filters. I just noticed these zeros are at the bottom. Every time you drill in, I have one filter on here now getting rid of the zeros on the customer level. But if I want to get rid of these zeros on the vendor level, I have to come back in and reapply my filter. Every time you drill down, you need to reapply your filters. Okay, so now all those zeros are gone. So now I want to look at this for Harris Teeter. I want to know who Harris Teeter's #1 vendor, or I want to see the vendor list for Harris Teeter and how much volume they did. But I don't want to go back and reselect all my information here. So there's an easy way to get there. It's really not that complicated if you understand what you're reading. Just enough, you can make these changes. So this is modifying the MQL within MITS. And this will save you a lot of time if you end up doing a lot of MITS reporting. So if you read this, it's saying invoice with customer number CN equals 001 WA1000. I know WA1000 is Wakefern. I know 001 means that's just the prefix, meaning the company is L&R. So you can ignore the 001. You're going to see that on a lot of stuff. And I want to type in here HA4785. Click execute. Now, if I did that right, this should just automatically switch to Harris Teeter. So it's really that easy. So now just say I was in Harris Teeter and I only want to look at Maybelline. So now I know Harris Teeter for Maybelline, but I want to look at Revlon. So I could actually come back up to the MQL. And as you could see, it's giving me the 001 and the Maybelline vendor number is 001479. And I think 071249, I think that's L'Oreal. So if I just replace that with the L'Oreal and click execute, that should flip to L'Oreal. There you go. So it's really that easy. Playing with the MQL. Another thing I want to show you as far as playing with the MQLs, if you look here, this is saying 001, which is Harris Teeter. Now it's saying show me the sales for 071249, which is L'Oreal. Now it's saying give me the sales minus the year -1 sales year minus 1. So if I wanted to go back 2 years, I could actually change this to Y minus 2. I don't do this that often, but I just wanted to show you guys that you can do this if you play with it a little bit. Don't be afraid of breaking anything. You could always undo what you're doing here. Click execute. Now, if I did this right, it's going to go back 2 years. Yep, so now this changed to 2014. You see that? Before it was all 2015, so now it's 2014. So let me go back. Let me see here. I showed you sorting. I showed you exporting to Excel. I showed you filtering. Let's export this out to Excel again. And I just want to cover that one more time because it's definitely going to be part of the test. And it's something that if you're using MITS, you have to understand how to get it into Excel. So I just exported that to Excel. Delete the top 2 rows. Delete the first column. Select all your data. Go to Data, Filter. Select blanks only. And in this case, there was only one row that you're deleting because there literally wasn't a bunch of different information on the report. Delete that. Actually, I missed it. I wanted to grab all the blanks. There we go. Oh, I did the wrong column. Sorry about that. So now you have a nice clean report that you could actually do any kind of pivot tables or subtotals you wanted off of it. So with that said, I am going to unmute everybody and see if there's any questions that anyone has before I end this call to see if I can address any other questions from anybody. Does anyone have any questions on the material that I just reviewed? Anybody? Okay, everybody. Since no one really had any questions or anything, I'm going to end the meeting with that. Like I said, this will be the last MITS class. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to email me or call me. But what I do need you to do in order to have your attendance on this class counted is to send an email to LR University and let them know at that email that you are on today's training class, and you will be counted for attendance. Sometime early next week, I will have posted a test that I want everyone to complete and send back to me. I'll come up with some pretty good instructions on what I want everyone to do. If you have any questions once you review what I'm requesting on the test, please get back to me and let me know. Once you're done, you'll submit it to me. I'll let you know if you passed it or failed it. If you did fail it and you want to retake it, it's perfectly fine with me. I'll work with you on what you did wrong to make sure you understand the material. And I guess we will go from there. Thank you, everyone. Have a good rest of your day, and I'll talk to everybody soon.